Hello, everyone. We would like to welcome you today to our session in which you will hear from three speakers and their reflections on approaches for strengthening relationships to land and water and for their sustainable management through Indigenous stories, knowledge systems, and Indigenous science. And you will already notice that this room is probably set up a little bit differently from some of the rooms that you've been sitting in. This is much more in keeping with the Indigenous culture to have things in a circle and everybody is connected. So thank you for supporting us with this room arrangement. And we're going to ask for your help potentially at the end to put the room back the way it was for the next group. My name is Alison Webb, and we're here today with thanks to How We Walk with the Land and Water Project, the Canadian Embassy to Stockholm, and the Canada Water Agency, for which I am the Director General of the Freshwater Policy Engagement Directorate. As is customary in Canada, I would like to acknowledge the traditional territories on which we're meeting, and I encourage all of you to reflect and give thanks to the Indigenous nations on whose territories you live and express gratitude for their stewardship. And for those of you who are joining us virtually, you can also express your gratitude and take a moment to give thanks to the Indigenous nations on whose territory you live and work. I am joined today by the following distinguished panelists. I have two in person with me and one virtually. So this is our first time doing this hybrid arrangement, and we're really grateful to all of the people who are supporting us with the technology. First, I would like to introduce virtually is Colleen James, and she's a Wolves mother and also a mother, a grandmother, a Daklewedi clan member of the Carcross Tagish First Nation, a teacher, a cultural advisor, a researcher, a water carrier, and a humble messenger. Next, just right here beside me, is Bêlit Peters, and she's a citizen of the Tan-Quechan Council First Nation and a member of the Wolf Clan. And to her right, we have Shuchu Lee, expecting mother, Pat Jo, is from the Tagish Kwan, one of the Indigenous peoples of the North and the Coast, and is of the Daklewedi clan, the Killer Whale, and Wolf Crest, and a proud citizen of the Kwanlin First Nation. Pat is a teacher, elder, knowledge keeper, and outspoken person for First Nation culture, history, beliefs, and values. She specializes in First Nation oral history and oral stories and is passionate about translating those authentic stories to students from kindergarten to grade 12 and to all levels of government. In addition to some of her many talents, she also has significant and deep experience as a First Nation integration teacher and also has worked in many levels of government and been instrumental on projects involving the Yukon First Nation history and culture. Pat was the chief land claims negotiator for the first urban First Nation and worked along chief and elders to help secure approximately 50 square miles of prime land within the city of Whitehorse in Yukon Territory in northern Canada and started the Jackson Lake Healing Camp. She has worked tirelessly over the years as a Yukon educator and helped many students achieve success in their lives. And for that, she was recognized by her fellow educators as a 2022 Yukon Government Indigenous Employee Award. And in 2021, she was a recipient of the Canadian Teachers Federation recognition of an outstanding Indigenous educator. And now I would like to invite the panelists who you've been introduced to perform a ceremonial opening.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending good afternoon, for attending our session today. Thank you, Bêlit and Pat, for holding the ground there for us in this session. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge the hosts here for us at our session. I'd like to acknowledge Alison. Thank you for working with us today for the How We Walk with the Land and Water Project, the Canadian Embassy to Stockholm, and the Canada Water Agency for partnering with us to be here today. we'd like to acknowledge the Sami people who have long stewarded and nurtured and looked after their lands and waters for the benefit for us all and for us to be meeting on the lands of Sweden and the Sami today. I'm very honored to be here and a part of it. I'd like to invite Bêlit to speak a little bit about the significance of fire to the people of Yukon and the headwaters of the Yukon River, the significance of fire and how we use it in our everyday lives. And Bêlit, being the youngest of our group, is going to light the fires for us today, which is the beginning of our discussions and the center of our governance system. Thank you, Bêlit. Go ahead.
So I'm going to turn on the candles first.
We always have the younger people light the fires or carry the water in these ceremonies. It's very significant. Okay. And fire and water travel together, and fire makes up the center of our earth. It's always there, always in the center of our earth. Go ahead, Bêlit.
I was taught that if you don't respect fire, fire won't respect you. And in the Yukon, our flower is the fireweed, and it is the first thing that grows after a forest fire. And that shows First Nations people that the forest is starting a new rebirth and it's starting to grow again. Not only is fire keeps us warm at night, but our most important discussions happen around fire, and the most meaningful conversations happen around and with fire. Thank you.
Geez, thank you, Bêlit, for lighting the fires and opening up our discussions today. And also a part of our little ceremony and more of a blessing today that we can all do. I would like to invite everyone in the room who has their water bottle and everyone online who has a water bottle or a cup of water, because a little bit further into our blessing, we're all going to partake in drinking together. But for now, I just would like you to have your water ready and listening to us in the room today, please. We also have a vessel of water in the room there because water is a very strong and powerful messenger, and it has memory. And so we always have water in the room, an open vessel of water that will be returned to the global waters after our discussion. So we'd like to acknowledge water and talk a little bit about how our ancestors, our Hashigun, told us and taught us about it. And I'd like Pat maybe to reflect a minute or two on that, please.
We're river people. We're from what they call the Yukon River. It is 3,200 kilometers. It flows through the Yukon, through Alaska, and into the Bering Sea. So I have to reflect on who we are. So give you an example. Both of us, or all three of us here, belong to the Ducklawady clan, but three different First Nations based on the Indianak. And we reside on the water, the Yukon River, the headwaters of the Yukon River and down the river. So our traditional laws were based on our Crow and Wolf clan. And like I said, we are all three belong to the Wolf clan, which we call the Ducklawady clan. We are part of the land and part of the water. As you can see, Bêlit, you have your wolf. I have my wolf. And behind me, you see, I have killer whale. So do I not join salt water? So in our land claims agreements, we come up with a little postage stamp, but we were all over in this traditional territory, and we flowed into 3,000 miles that had connect us. And everything that the Yukon River brings to us is connected to us, including the animals, the plants, the insects, the bears, the eagles. So part of the land, again, part of the water. So as a wolf, I'm a wolf on the land. As a killer whale, I'm from the water. And as an eagle, I'm part of the air. So that's where we get that part of the land, part of the water. So we connect everything. So that is so spiritual. So everything that we believe in traditional knowledge is that everything has a spirit. Everything has a life, and everything has a purpose. So we connect the mountains to our rivers. We connect our rivers to the ocean. And then we connect every one of us. We all flow to the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Yes, so like Pat talked about, as clans people, we grow up in certain areas and we learn about those waters in our areas. And a part of what we'd like you all to think about a little bit today is the waters where you come from, the waters where you grew up, the state of those waters. How are those waters? What do you water your garden with? I want you to think back and hold your waters, hold your vessel of water now. And Pat and Bêlit, I'm going to ask for your help a little bit here as we hold the water and work with the people and acknowledge and be grateful for the water. So like a prayer together as we hold this water and think about the water in our country and inside of our very bodies. Let's bow our heads in a little prayer of gratitude and appreciation for the water. Thank you, God, for the water, for the higher energy and the water cycle and the cycle of life here on planet Earth. We are grateful for this water. We are thankful for this water. We appreciate where the water comes from. We are grateful that we have clean water to drink. We appreciate that we're doing a better job of keeping the water clean. We are grateful that we will bring good and clean water to those in the world who pack it so far. We are appreciative that we can be aware of the waters around us, within us. That we can be aware of what the water is doing and where the water is going. That we can acknowledge each and every day and be grateful and appreciative to the water for the life-giving force that it is, for the lives and many things that it sustains, for the cycle that it goes through as it brings us all through our life cycles. Thank you for this opportunity to come together on behalf of water. Thank you for the opportunity as the human family to put our hearts and our minds together on behalf of this life-giving force and on behalf of what we see happening that so many people don't have it. Thank you that we can put our hearts and our minds together to be smart about how we balance our lives with the lives of all the others on the planet. We give you thanks for this water. We give you thanks for who we all are and where we come from, for our families and our home fires, for our nations and our countries. And we give you thanks most of all for this water we hold in our hands. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart that I have good, clean water to drink. Thank you all now in joining me in having a little drink of this wonderful, life-giving, delicious thing we live with every day called water. Go ahead, everybody, have a drink. Now, please join me, all of us together, in saying, I am water, water is me. 1, 2, 3. I am water,
water
water is
is
me.
me.
Goodness cheese for this water that's going to listen to us here today. I give you thanks, all of you, for participating and drinking that water together and acknowledging the goodness and the sacredness that it brings to us. Thank you once again. And Pat and Bêlit, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
No. You did a real good one.
Thanks so much, Colleen.
Okay, thank
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
thank you for starting us in such a grounding way. I know all of us are running from session to session and meeting to meeting, and I just found myself being able to exhale, put my feet on the ground, feel really grounded, and the positive. I know you're not with us in this room, you're with us in spirit, Colleen, and everyone who's joining us. But I can feel the energy in the room and how positive it is just for you doing that. So thank you for the meaningful and thoughtful opening to the three of you. And to everyone who's participating with us, joining us in a very open spirit. So with that stage now set, I want to invite Pat, Colleen, and Bêlit to join me as we move into the moderated session. And I'm going to ask some questions of the panelists, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions and answers from the audience, including those online, but let's see how we go. But I encourage everybody to save your thoughts as we are going through these questions and hearing the responses from our very esteemed colleagues and panelists with us. So the first question that I have for them is to acknowledge the presence and value of water in our lives today. Can you provide an example of how it is a vessel for reconciliation and cultural revitalization in your community or with partners or other governments?
I can go ahead. I can talk a little bit about how water has become a vessel to reconciliation and positive change in our community. And it was through the building of a traditional dugout Tlingit canoe in our community a few years ago that revitalized and connected us back to this 100-year-old tree. But it also, the artists and the carvers, one of which was my daughter's, worked at that for 8 full months, carving this dugout canoe out of one solid tree. And it was a very significant process in our community because the residential school lived in our community for 70 years. And so a part of this reconciliation, or part of this dugout canoe, helped us to reconcile with our traditional ways of paddling and making those vessels, and the traditional ways of teamwork and those chants that those people would use as they're working together paddling those dugout canoes from A to B. So I found the waterway, how we use dugout canoes and going on the water with those canoes was a vessel to our people reconciling with our very own culture. And so as a part of that also was that every wood chip that came off of that dugout canoe was representative of a lost or a traumatic soul that was acknowledged also in a final ceremony. So that's just one example I can think of, and I'll let Pat and Bêlit go ahead.
Mine is in 1958. They built a large dam without consulting with the First Nation, and it did a lot of damage over the 60 years. The loss of fish. We used to have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of fish used to come up the Yukon River, and we, in our spirituality and our beliefs, that fish are human beings, and which they are. They come to give life, and some of them know that they have to give life so we can have life. So we have to have the most respect for the animals, and there was no consideration at the time that this dam was being built. And then with the influx of population, the dam that's there now is not going to handle the people that are coming into the Yukon. And we don't have hundreds of thousands. In the last few years, it's kind of come up to what? Maybe another 10, 15, maybe 20,000 newcomers. So, like I said, the dam is not going to, but they're planning it, and we have a say. And when the first dam was being built, it was built for people and mining companies. It was a mine, big mine being, and so that was the economic opportunities. So no one at that time looked at the impact of the fish or the people or the way of life. When that dam was built, they made a homemade lake, man-made lake, in behind it and backed up all the water. And my grandfather said, I'm sure, he said, we could walk right across. And then when they let the water, while they had it backed up, hundreds of thousands of fish were backed up behind it. This must have been a culture shock in my grandfather's and all our grandfathers' days, and grandmothers. The story is that they had gunny sacks and they were picking up these king salmon, which was bigger than me, and taking them to the other side. But then what man-made lake is. And the construction workers helped at that time too. The First Nation elders were there. So they knew. So the few that they packed through, because they did build a fish ladder, but for thousands of years, the fish were guided. They knew their trail, like we knew our trails. And they didn't know how to use that fish ladder. And 60 years later, Bêlit will talk about it. I don't think they still know. But yet, when they go to one of the world's biggest hatching ground, which is in my traditional territory where I was born, on the land, and the little yearlings would come back, and I don't know how they made it through the dam. I don't know if they knew where the fish ladder is. So now, we're going to have a say. And I look at it as how can we pay back to the fish? How can we bring back our culture? Because we gathered because of the fish came. Carcross Tagish came to Marsh Lake. Ta'an came to Marsh Lake. We all came to Marsh Lake, the three of our First Nations, to celebrate and to honor that the salmon is coming back, as they have for thousands of years, to feed us, to give us their life. So, this is other part of the belief we'll get into, is they're coming back, and we're going to make sure that when they put that dam in, that we have a say for the animals. They looked after us for thousands of years. It's time we look after them.
In the Yukon, well, you've probably heard this all throughout the week, but water is our life source. But it's not only just our life source, it's what guides us towards a better future, a sustainable future, with not only the land and the water, because you can't talk about the water without talking about the land, because everything is connected. But working with the water, for the water, is what people need to understand, non-Indigenous partners, and they need to understand that water is what guides us. When I have a problem in my life, I'll go to my traditional territories, and that's the Lake Labarge, or we call it the Ta'an Man. And I sit at the lake and I listen to the trees, to the water, and I reflect, and I don't talk because the land and the water is talking to me. It's providing me information and guidance that I need to get through my life. And if you don't respect that, or if you don't understand that, you won't be able to understand First Nations peoples and their values. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing those thoughts. We're going to go to the next question, which is quite related to what Bêlit was just talking about, that interconnectedness. So the question is for the three of you, taking a moment to recognize the importance of interrelatedness and how it guides your community's approach to land and water management. How is this connection important to you?
Well, like I said, is as First Nation people, we believe that the part of spirituality, and that everything has a life and everything has a purpose. They're not just here because of whatever. And from a scientific Western worldview, and way they taught us in school, is that there's living and non-living things. To us, the mountain is the most precious and respectful item on this planet. We cannot live without mountains. We cannot. They're here for a purpose, and yet they've been ignored. And from our point of view, it's so important because it is where life begins. You look at these rocks and you think they're just a pile of rock. They have a purpose. They're the only thing that will bring you fresh water. They talk to the sky, they talk to the river, they connect. The mountains collect the snow. They're glaciers. And they communicate with the weather. And they dribble down water. And pretty soon a little bit more heavier water comes down as you get closer, and the spring and summer is coming, and they drain into the river, the creeks, the river, all the tributaries, all the mountains along the river doing the same thing, passing it on. That's just like the traditional territories. As a wolf woman, I inherit the land for thousands and thousands of years. I pass that on to my children, who are women. We're a matriarchic society. We own that chunk. We don't own it, but we're caretakers of the land and water. We have to have the most respect because they're the ones that have given their life so that we can live. That's the most. We cannot disrespect it. If we do, our oral story says we'll have a dooli. A dooli depends on the language. It means that if you hurt something, you will have bad luck. If you disrespect something, you will have bad luck. Not just to you, but your whole community, your whole clan. And it was quite harsh. So we had to have the most respect. And that's why I'm wolf on the land. That's why I'm killer whale. All rivers run to salt water. So that's why we're all connected. And then the salt water starts the process again. Evaporation, weather, the same thing, we're all connected. So that's the first thing we believe. How are we connected? How are we connected to everything? You hurt one of those cycles. We're hurting. Planet Earth is hurting. The fish are hurting. The salmon has suffered just as much as we have suffered in our traditional territories. So how do I look at it as we're all here fighting for the same thing, because we're going to fight for water. And we're going to fight for water, we're going to be fighting for life, not just ours. Thank you.
Yeah, that we are very interconnected, and a part of this whole How We Walk with the Land and Water project initiative is totally connected to that interconnectedness and connectedness that Pat was just talking about. In the Tlingit culture, we call it Koosge. It's that law that we live under. She called it Du Li. We call it Koosge. It's a law that we're raised under, kind of like the do's and don'ts, how you behave on the land and water as you're interacting with it. Our elders, when we first initiated the Yukon land claims process, called it part of the land and part of the water. We are a part of the land and a part of the water. We can't own the land and we can't own the water because we're a part of it. And so when we talk about regional land use planning, which is a tool and a chapter in our land claim agreement, when we talk about regional land use planning, we call it regional land relationship planning, because water and land are not separable because of the global earth cycles and that water cycle, the very important cycle that Pat had alluded to, that this cycle goes on. And, you know, a part of that interconnectedness we talk about is giving things a rest. This idea that certain places and certain things should be given rest. And so part of our clan way of doing things is to sit down and discuss, well, where are we going to go hunting this year? Where are we going to go fishing this year? And so as we don't overuse, overhunt, overfish a place, and there's good discussion about it, but definitely that Koosge, that how we behave on the land and the water, so we don't bring negativity to us, to our family, to our community, or to our nation. Thank you. Go ahead, Bêlit, if you got anything to say.
Could you repeat the question?
Of course I can. Taking a moment to recognize the importance of interrelatedness and how it guides your community's approach to water and land management. How is this connection important to you?
Just like Colleen said, in How We Walk with the Land and Water, we don't say we use the land or the water. We have a relationship with the land and the water. Just acknowledging that word change is really important, because it not only focuses on First Nation, Indigenous-led land use and water relationship planning, but it also just gives respect to the source that we are fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've all talked about multi-generational stewardship, and this question is related to that. And I think it's something that's quite different in a non-Indigenous context. So it'd be really interesting for people here to have your views about, are there ways you involve all generations in your water and land relationship planning? And what benefits do you see when this approach is used? And you've talked about your grandmothers and your grandfathers, and you've talked about, even right now, today, you have different generations in this room. So interested in hearing your thoughts about the benefits of that multi-generational approach to water and land relationship planning.
I'd like to start that one. Do you mind, Colleen?
No, go ahead, Pat.
Okay. Where were we again? where the Yukon is, Canada is a big country, but in the Yukon, we have just been discovered or colonized in the last 100 years. So, and during the early 1900s, just to give you an example, my grandmother, at the age of 5 years old, was put in residential school, and she stayed there 13, 14 years. No visit. Her mom and father both passed on, and no sisters, no brothers. So she came out in the 20s, and she married, and she had 10 children, and she raised me. She delivered me where we're talking about the headwaters of the Yukon River. Every one of her children went to residential school. Most, I would say all, I can't say all, most, except for one, either passed from some social alcoholism or suicide, or so the dramatic effects of losing our culture in the last, would you say, 60 years, 70 years. So we used to occupy the river. We, as I said, I'm Wolf. I inherited this land for thousands of years. I have to marry a Crow man. We have two clans. I have to marry, definitely have to marry. I can't marry another Wolf because I'll be marrying my brother or sister. So he is chosen by my people, and he might come from another community, upriver or downriver. So that's how we communicated, by the river. And the male's job was to come to my community, because my children, I own the clan of that children. My children will stay right there. They will never move again for another 1,000 years. So this disruption happened during colonialism. We were put other places and forced other places and confined in other places like reserves or residential school, just to name a few. So a lot of that culture is gone. And it's being, and I like to take time to honor our ancestors, because we have a land claim agreement. They can't take that away. I keep looking up to Colleen up there. It's for the younger generation. They have a lot on their shoulders that we passed on to them, because it's my generation that didn't know this happened. We knew we went to residential school, but we thought it was just, we had to. We never thought about it being a culture clash or whatever. My grandma went, my aunts and uncles went, I went. So when we came out of there, I was taught to be shamed to be First Nation person. So even in my generation, it took a long time for me to rediscover my homeland, come back and fight. So we're trying to bring those beliefs and values and culture, and like I said, the younger generation is holding the bag of our last 50, 60, 70 years of colonialism and a lot of damage. And I really have to take it to them for taking this on. So you've got a lot of work to do. And not only that, our generation, or your elders and your grandparents' generation, have left a mess. And you're going to have to clean it up. So I really honor the youth that came here to do the fighting. So does that answer the question? I don't know. I forgot the question.
I'd like to add a little bit about that transmission of knowledge that you're talking about also, and how that, we know that the residential school took the Indian out of the child. And a part of what we're doing now is reconciliation with our own culture and languages, to the point where there's a really strong revitalization of the language. The young people are thirsty and hungry for their language and culture. And they know through their elders and their parents and their aunts and their uncles saying to them that they do have a job to do, because they sort of inherit all of this, right? The leadership is handed down, the hunting tools that can no longer be used by uncle have to be handed down to the nephew, who then, picks them up and starts to rustle the land and know it like his uncle did. So in the How We Walk with the Land and Water process, our young Bêlit here in some of our open houses has conducted oral interviews with some of the elders and has talked quite a bit about that. And I know she's gleaned a lot of information there. But the reason I'm saying that is because of the How We Walk, it's very important to transmute or transmit the knowledge. And the only way to do that is sort of to immerse the youth. So just sort of throw them into the work that needs to be done, and also to recognize, in Indigenous cultures, recognize passions in young people very early. A young person that works with wood all the time often will grow up to work with and have a strong relationship with wood. It reveals itself quite early. So our young representative here, Bêlit, has revealed early her passion and affinity for the health of the water, for the health of the fish, and has worked with those things through a lot of her young working life. And so, it's very important, that transmission of knowledge to the, and so we always have the elders and the youth in the room, or at least we strive to.
Thanks very much, Bêlit. Maybe they're passing this to you now, and maybe I'll reframe the question a little bit for you. Not to put any pressure on you, but just what benefits do you see in this type of approach for water and land relationship planning when you can be informed by other generation, including your elders? How does that help you in the work that you need to do?
Well, it's easy to get started. They've done a lot of the heavy lifting, and I just want to touch on what Colleen had to say about How We Walk. Working with How We Walk, and yes, I do interview a lot of people. It's never this many though. It's like one-on-one, like never like this. But I interview people and I listen, and I usually don't speak that much because I'm trying to absorb the knowledge that they're giving. But when you hear different stories growing up and doing the work that I do as a First Nations youth, you can't help but mourn the life that you should have and could have lived. And that's what makes me want to preserve the land and the water, because I grew up feeling disconnected from my culture. I lived in Whitehorse and I went to fish camps and I listened to the stories, but none of them resonated with me. I wasn't really listening, but after working and being on the land in a summer student setting, that shifted my perception of it, because youth are told, Indigenous youth are told growing up, that protecting the land and the water is our job. When you grow up, this is what you have to do. You have to make sure that everything is going to be protected and it's all on you. And it's overwhelming and it's scary at times. And I know that for me, being and working with the land, that's what shifted my thought process of it. Not, I have to take care of the land, I have to work with the water and keep it clean, but that I get to, and that I get to enjoy the land and the water and all that it brings. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's a really important message for everybody, and we all need to think about your words. The next question is related to what advantages do you identify from traditional knowledge systems fusing with Western knowledge systems? We all grapple with this quite a bit. We make evidence-based decisions, or we make decisions based quite often only on Western information, and we don't take into account traditional ecological knowledge as much as we need to. But I would like to hear from you all what advantages you think there would be if we were able to have the two working together, and how will this assist to achieve sustainable land and water management? Colleen, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So we do a lot of watering, monitoring of water, trying to fill some data gaps. So we've essentially in Cartgrass Tagish really working hard to marry the traditional knowledge with the scientific data. So as Indigenous people, and Pat would concur, and Bêlit too, that we observe things on the land all the time. We observe changes and we make mental notes of them, and we discuss them with each other when we get together. And we come to a conclusion, yes, the water is high, no, the water is low, the fish, these different observations. But we have place names that our elders have documented for us. So a lot of the mountains and rivers and places in Yukon have names of people that came here in the last 120 years, like Pat saying, for contact for us. And we're now discovering that some of those names, have like what they call empirical scientific ecological data embedded within them. So Wind on My Forehead Mountain, Grizzly Bear Throat, Otter Point, Bald Eagle Nest Point, Sandy Beach, Big Fish Tail, Little Fish Tail. These various names, Taku, where all the geese gather in the fall. So even our place names begin to show us and tell us what's going on in any given place. So taking our place names and our various data systems and working together to collect enough data to be able to plan our relationships with the land. Where are the better places to live or make a residence? Where is the best place to leave alone? We have a caribou recovery program here, a Southern Lakes Caribou Recovery Program, where the people, all three of our First Nations, have volunteered not to hunt the caribou for 35 years. That's a really long time to voluntarily disconnect yourself from a very culturally significant food source and cultural connecting point for us. But for 35 years, we've not hunted those caribou because they came down to 210, and now they're up to 2,200. So that's one of the more successful caribou recovery programs in Canada that we're very, very proud of. So we're having to now plan around those caribou and work our way around them. And so a lot of the planning processes kind of are looking at both data sets, right? What's happening here that the pH is rising? Makes you look at some of the reasons that could cause pH, to rise. But basically we were developing a water strategy that's both taking those into consideration. So we have what we call catch and release fishing in the Yukon. We call it playing with fish. We're taught not to play with nature. We're taught not to play with fish. But 80% of the fish caught in the Yukon is released. So we're trying to marry both data sets so that we can reduce the amount that's caught and released. Like if we can find a reduction there or some balance, my uncles tell me that's a good compromise to find balance. Anyways, it's enough for me for now.
Thank you, Colleen, because you brought up some subjects that, like I said, we're involved with a lot of things, but there's some things that we just, like the fish and release program. You hook a fish, you look at it, you show it on TV, and you throw it back. We have oral stories about that. Some call it Salmon Boy, some call it Moldy Head, some call it the boy who lived with fish or the girl who lived with fish. Depends on where you lived traditionally for thousands of years. In my traditional territory and probably in Carcross, we call it Moldy Head, and it's a young boy who his mom gave him some fish and he said it's moldy. I don't like it, and he throws it away. And so he starts walking along the river, and the fish people, the salmon people, grab him. They take him. And they take him for years, 4 years, the migration. They take him, and this is how we use scientific, oral tradition with scientific knowledge. They take him, and he learns the way to live with fish. And he tells, when he's down there, it's just like a whole city, but it's salmon people. And they teach him, he said, when you eat other fish, he said, make sure you put all the bones together and treat it respectfully. But this one day, this boy, he didn't want to throw the bones away in the right place, so he just threw it someplace else, and he saw this fish come back. Don't they keep coming back? Reincarnation? Yeah, keep coming back. And he noticed that one fish didn't have a fin, or one of his eyes was missing. And he thought, oh, I know that fish. It was that fish I threw his pieces away someplace else and didn't put it back. So we have salmon ceremonies, and we take our all the bones back to the lake when the fish come. We throw it back into the lake. But always Seagull, Larry takes a piece too, but that he don't count. You take it all back so that the bones can grow new flesh and come back again, so that they can feed us again. So that's how we believed that we had to have the most respect. So here we are looking at the fish and the hook, and you throw it out. Most, and now they're finding out most of them die. What is it? How long has this fish and release program been going on? All the elders had talked about it when they didn't really have a say, and we don't like the fish and release program. So they're referring to the oral stories. So if we treat it with disrespect, it's not coming back. Isn't that true? Our fish are not coming back. So that's how our oral stories teach us for thousands of years to be respectful. But if he was under there in the fish world, he would never have been able to come back if he disrespected the laws of the fish. He would have probably stayed a fish himself. It's a much longer story than what I could tell. Can you add to that? So much disrespect in our policies that conflicts with ours today in our beliefs and values. How do you explain to the scientific world or traditional knowledge? How do you explain our beliefs of transformation? How do you believe you take all the bones back? How do you pass those traditional beliefs and values into policies? We're to keep doing it, and we will win. I've seen our elders patiently sat back and never said not much. They don't talk like Colleen and I do. They go, never say nothing, but they pass the message on to us, and we're supposed to be the ones that talk. So respect in everything.
It definitely benefits to the science and the traditional knowledge working together. We know that from our discussions a little bit, and maybe, I don't know if Bêlit wants to say anything about that.
Traditional knowledge is so valuable, and it is upsetting that it took so long for it to be acknowledged and appreciated, but with traditional knowledge being backed by Western science, that gives First Nations people, not only in my community, but other communities, a step into the door, a step into the right direction, and a step to have their voices amplified.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. And you've given a lot of the audience a lot to think about. We have a few minutes for questions, and then we'll also have Paddle have a chance to give us a short oral story as well. So we'll see if anyone here has questions or online. I think we have a microphone that we can pass around. If there are any questions, we might be just taking it in. Yes, please.
Hello. I've just met with these two lovely women and we've had a good yarn. My question is, when you work with government, non-government, scientists, engineers, whoever, how good are they at giving you back, whether it be reports or documents that then can help you fight the fight? Because you've got your traditional knowledge and you've got the Western science knowledge. And you can go to someone and you can say, well, you won't listen to me. Here's Western science in words. How good are they at giving you back what they take from you?
I'll give you a little example. We had some scientists come to my community, and it was about, we came over the Beringa Bridge. You know that Ice Age movie? Yeah, came over, yeah, okay. Oh, you might be right. I said, well, did when they came over, did they have the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky? We don't know. I said, well, when Crow stole the sun and the moon and the stars, the world like that was pitch dark. He shares, he steals the moon, he steals the stars, and he steals the sun, and he throws it into the air, and he shares it with everybody. That is the First Nation component. We have to share. We have to share, and that's all we ever done to the newcomers in our country, is we shared our food, we tried to help them, because we have relationship with the animals and humans. We thought that we would get the same respect back. So I asked him, I said, was there suns? And I said, you know, when he also made that sun and the sun shone, some of the animals got scared and ran in the river or water. Some got scared, flew into the sky. Some got scared and ran on the land. And he said one was too scared to go anywhere. He stayed one place. Can you tell me who that was? He was human. He told him, you walk like me now with 2 legs. That's why we stay one place. That's why I'm Tagish Kwan. I'm not Cree. I'm not from another place. That's my traditional area. Crow put me there. So that's how scientists didn't argue with me too long. So I use the oral stories to work with science. You know, they say we've been here 20, 30,000 years. It changes again. I don't know. But me, I know I come from Crow. I know Crow made the world. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'd also like to add that the scientists that we're working with here are very much allies and collaborators. Mm-hmm. One, they're very passionate about their science and what they're doing. And they've learned what we're doing and have respectfully asked to be like partners and to help in any way that they can. So we have like 3 universities in Canada that are working with us. But also, you know, when we talked about Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow, we talked about research and researchers, and that we wanted the research to be meaningful and beneficial to us. And so while it might not have been, you know, I'm thinking of the Royal Commission on Indigenous People in Canada, which is gathering dust and survey and study and survey and study after that is kind of saying, you know, the same thing. So we want our research to benefit us, and it certainly is here. And I really do appreciate and I'm grateful for the scientists that are coming in and helping us making the various tools that we will use to help us make decisions in the future when it comes to development. So predictive ecological models of what the glaciers will look like in 50 years, predictive aquatic models of what the riparian and the shoreline might be doing, considering the more water we're getting, the warmer the climate gets. As you know, the north is more hit by climate change, and we certainly, all three of us, see and feel that every day. But I would say that the relationship with scientists are more of a collaboration. We all want and need something, and we're willing to work together in a good and respectful manner to get it.
I see another question. Two more. Okay.
Hi, I'm Emily Hines with the Forum for Leadership on Water in Canada, and I want to know that we regularly meet with federal government on how to make better and more sustainable water policy, and we always say the first part of that should be reconciliation. And what I'd like to know is what can my group and other groups like us do to be better allies in the process of better water policy moving forward?
In the Yukon, we have a land claims and self-government agreement, so it's quite different from a lot of the other First Nation because they're still reserved. They still live in a reserve, and they're still governed by the Indian Act. If you could take a look at with us, we have a Chapter 14 land management, and we're quite consulted on that. We also have economic opportunities, many chapters in there to help us, and one of them is meaningful consultation, and that's what needs to be done. And look outside the box of the Indian reservation, because river doesn't care about borders, water doesn't care about borders, and so I think that has to be looked at, and I hear there's water pricing for how much water you use. Don't make that water just corporations. Think how it's going to affect. Like I said, how does those policies connect? How did they connect to the reservation? How did they connect to the city? Everybody has to connect, and everybody has to be on that same goal: safe drinking water, and plan for the future. That's the way I look at it. I mean, that's what our land claims and self-government talks about, and that's what we always talk about. Think about 7 years. Not 7 years from colonialism, but 7 years from me and from Bêlit. She'll talk about what 7 years. 7 years planning. 7 generation planning. So each generation will add another 7 years. So we have to connect. We can't just think about ourselves. When we built that dam in Whitehorse in 1958, it was for one reason, and that was to supply power to a mining place, which is 200 miles from our community. Not thinking about anything else.
And organizations such as yourself could help Indigenous people and tribes all around the world by talking to the water sector and the policy makers about the importance of spirit to the spirit of the river, the spirit of the mountain, the spirit of the fish, the rights per se of that fish to live, or those zooplankton to live, and the rights of everything to live together without impact on the earth. And I guess I'm saying that because when I read a lot around water and water management, the word economy or economic is almost always in there. Yeah. And while I understand, there's economy and economics, that we really have to fundamentally shift how we do things and what we're the kind of garbage and pollutants and things that we're leaving behind in the name of industry that needs to, make money. So our worldviews, our perceptions of our relationship with the lands and the waters around us, how we govern ourselves, we'd like to work with everyone. We'd like a seat at the table and a voice in the room when it comes to water and land decisions that impact and affect all of us. But ultimately, this 1% of water that Mother Earth has that's essential to our very lives, you can help us by shifting how we do things when it comes to how many parts are acceptable in the degradation of that water that ultimately, that corporate regulator probably wouldn't drink at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thanks. We've got a question just here at the front. I might have to cut it off after that. Let's see how we're doing on timing. Gentleman with the gray and white sweater there. Sorry, I didn't ask if you.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick. My name is Hamish, and thank you all for speaking from the heart. Colleen, thank you for the ceremony at the beginning, and for Bêlit for lighting the fire. This reflection was very important for me. I was thinking about all the rivers that I've been living next to in my life. I've lived in different countries, so I don't have the same connection with the land as all of you. But I think you speak with I think, although you have a close connection with your lands, I think everyone has a shared humanity that we can awaken. And it's a very specific question. Have you brought this sort of contemplative element into the way you communicate with people who do not have such a connection with the land? Because I think it can really, really change the way people engage with issues around water and land in terms of the spirit of the water and the land, rather than just, numbers and figures and graphs. Is it something like this you've tried before? In terms of doing a sort of a ceremony, or having a way of recognizing the kind of shared humanity's connection with land and water?
Absolutely. We do a lot of ceremonies or blessings or acknowledgements, but basically connecting, the state of the water and the life-giving force that it is today to our great, great, great grandchildren. And so, as humans, we all need the same things. We're 80% water. We need air. We eat carbon. Our bodies are 96 point something. And if we relate that to the basic elements of what the Indigenous people call the wheel, fire, air, water, earth, kind of a thing. Well, our great, great, great grandchildren will need all of those things too. And I think if we start to think about what will be in their lives around clean water or water at all, we might be more inclined as the human family to be more sane in how we value our future generations that way. So I appreciate the comment definitely that way, and give thanks. We invite as a part of, instead of making laws that say do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, which is very other governmentally, we've said. We talk about our oral tradition, and where we teach you your relationship with the land, and you're asked not to do something, or not asked to, but told like this: if you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. Bottom line, it's a fact, right? And so you play with fire, you get burnt. Chances are you won't do that again. So like that, we want to ask the visitors using the land, coming and using the land, and there's a lot of them, to give thanks, to leave it better than they left it, to acknowledge it a little bit. So we invite people to do that, and we think it goes a long way. Well, we don't think, we know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for the question. We're pretty much at time.
Nope.
What? Okay. Just making sure we have enough time to put the room back. And we're going to have Pat is going to also, in their tradition, tell us a story as well. So make sure we have time for that. Okay, I saw another hand at the back. Let's pass the mic back there and keep the conversation going. Sorry, I tried to cut it off too early.
First of all, I would like to thank you very much for this discussion. It's really a space that is at the same time and does not is not the same as any other ones, and at the same time it's super. It feeds a lot. So thanks for that. So I'm from the Convention on Wetlands, Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, and I'm curious to know if you, in your traditional language, you have words for wetland, for the term wetland, or if you have terms for rivers, lakes, marshes, or I'm curious about the use of the language, and also what water mean in your language. Is it the water, the H2O, the one that we have in the glass, or is it immediately connected to a space like a river or like a stream or something? Please tell us about your language. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Could you all hear that? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So, yes. So our language comes from the land and comes from the water. And so when we speak it and we're bringing it back, I'm not fluent, but we're trying to pick it up. So please join me in saying the Tlingit word for water is Hèen.
Team.
And the Tagish word for water is two. And as we say those words, we're bringing back to life that language. And so yes, river is Hèen. You heard the word Hèen. River is Hèen. Lake, a big lake is Mencho, big lake they call it, or Big Fish Lake, or Dishkwanga Lake. It's a name of a lake where only the white fish has red flesh. It's the only lake around where that white fish has red flesh. There's Tuchai Lake, the only lake where the trout has orange fish. So the DNA of the Yukon River watershed is comprised of like many different little watersheds and feeder lakes and rivers. And so, yes, we've even been accused of being very smart. It's called having water in your head.
Just to add to that, when we were just talking about the water and the dam and the devastations that, as let's say that Yukon, we have lots of water, but we've got a lot of problems, and we just got a big problem now with one of the gold mines. Water is contaminated. What do you call that? The water leakage. Yeah. So it's a big thing back home right now. But we always believe what happens comes back. So even though this is all happening and we were left out of the process, we are part of the process now. Something is forcing us all together to work together, and that's water. We all drink water. So, and it just fitting part of what Colleen was saying is that we bless it, and we're all joining together to make it clean and help whatever we can do. So I think we're all in that fight together. The other one is, and just a little story I want to tell you, just a little longer, but I've got to shorten it because the guy over there is pointing. This is a Tlingit story, Colleen, you can help me. Tlingit, we're interrelated and intermarried. Long time ago, on this mountain, there was a bunch of trees. You know how the mountain comes? All these great big trees. Boy, Grandpa Tree, he's looking down and he's shaking his head. And here's this one big tree. No one better talk to me. I'm the biggest tree here. I look good, man. I've got muscles. Look at all my branches. Boy, I'm big. And the female tree looks back. Well, nobody looks as good as me, I don't need to talk to you. So they start all bullying each other, and Grandpa Tree looks down and shakes his head. Oh, so they're all starting to fight now. And pretty soon they hear a roar. Oh, geez, they couldn't hear for this. Here's a big avalanche coming. And wipes down this mountain and takes the trees with him. And gee, a couple days later, Grandpa Tree get up. He looks down, he saw this devastation. Gee, he saw those trees broken, and he was really... So he calls out, "Hello? Anybody there? Hello?" No, nobody answer. Gee, pretty soon, long time go by, and he's getting sick and lonely, and I'm going to try one more time. Gee, he said, "Hello? Listen, hello?" Pretty soon he heard, "Grandpa, Grandpa, I'm way down here." Gee, good. He says, "Child," he says, "make this as a lesson for you. When we're fighting and arguing and we have different beliefs or whatever," he said, "we get weak. When we're strong and we're all together, you see our roots get strong, nothing can hurt us." Think about that story when we're fighting for water. We got to be together. Thank you.
I can't think of a more fitting end to this session. Thank you so much to all of you. Many wise words. I love the concept that you've talked about as well, about having a relationship, not using, but having a relationship, that it's our privilege, it's our honor to look after water and shifting that. And thank you so much for your willingness to bare your heart and share with us some things that are deeply personal and impactful to you as people, as well as your community. It has left a very indelible impression on everybody here. Colleen, thank you for joining us virtually from the Yukon. You feel not so far away, honestly. You feel with us. We feel you here. We're very grateful to you and to everybody here who's taken this time to learn. Personally, every time I have the chance to be with any of the Indigenous teachers, I just learn so much. So thank you to all of you for sharing and teaching us. And I hope we will take that lesson of working together to look after water, because we will not be able to do it individually. So that is a challenge and also an opportunity for all of us. Thank you again for everybody who's been able to join us, and to those of you who were here online with us. If anyone in the room is able to help us put the tables back, we would appreciate it. And if you have further questions, because I know we had to cut our questions a little short, I'm sure our panelists will be happy to talk to you one-on-one as well, and they'll be available after this. Again, our thanks.
Thank you all. Finish.